Welcome to Grad Health Walk program. Your presenter is Stephen Kamore. The focus of this episode is parental burnout, signs and symptoms. Research shows that parental burnout is not successfully managed in our contemporary society. This is the inspiration that informs our discussion as a proactive and preventive measure of parental burnout. My listener, there is undisputable evidence that parental burnout is an increasing problem in our modern society, with severe consequences being witnessed and reported, such as domestic violence, child abuse, separations, depressions, suicides and homicides, and increased drugs and substance abuse, including alcoholism. Now, my listener, parental burnout does not discriminate on the basis of age. Both young and old parents are vulnerable. Neither does it discriminate on the socio-economic status. The rich, the poor, the educated, the professionals, the religious are all vulnerable. There is evidence that parental burnout affects our physical, emotional, and mental health. And so, to me, parental burnout, therefore, should be considered a mental health issue. And if it is not addressed or treated, then it can result to mental illness and other physical sicknesses. What is my objective, therefore, in this presentation? The objective is to promote the parents' health by creating awareness on what burnout is all about, and two, what are the presenting signs and symptoms that can guide you on what we call self-assessment. My expectations is that the insight gained through this program will help you in self-assessment on parental burnout and seek proactive intervention where necessary. It is my personal conviction that the only thing to do with good advice and knowledge is to pass it on. It is never of any use to oneself, and that's why we have the Grad Health Walk program, to be able to disseminate knowledge that is going to help you promote your health and also enrich your lives. My motivation, therefore, in Grad Health Walk program is to empower our society with the right information and knowledge, because people can suffer due to ignorance, and this is a fact that is recorded even in the Holy Scriptures. In the book of Hosea, chapter 4 and verse 6, the Bible says that my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. My listener, we are no longer in the dispensation of age and experience. We are in the era of knowledge and information. And therefore, it is my belief that knowledge is power, and when shared out, power is multiplied. Let us now focus on our first objective. What is parental burnout and how does it develop? Parental burnout, my listener, is defined as a state of physical, mental, and emotional exhaustion. I want you to note a few things here. The physical represents your body, the mental represents your mind, and the emotional represents your feeling. In other words, I want you to understand that parental burnout affects your entire body. So in burnout, when you talk about exhaustion, it is as a result of spending too much energy or having too much energy output than input. Parental burnout is as a result of exhaustion caused by consistent exposure to emotionally and physically demanding situations over a prolonged period of life. And therefore, my listener, I want you to know that burnout does not happen in a day. It takes time and a process. So even as we discuss the signs and the symptoms, you don't only observe them in one day and conclude you have a burnout. These signs and symptoms must persist for a period of time. Therefore, let us briefly reflect together on the process and the stages of parental burnout. Stage number 1, we call it alarm stage. This is like ringing a bell, alerting the mind that and the body that everything is not right. So this occurs when we first perceive something as stressful or challenging in parenting. And therefore what happens is that the mind, when it is alerted, it starts now preparing your body to respond. I want you to imagine if you have to have some thieves who storms your house at night. You know, when the alarm when the alarm is on, you wake up and you start now thinking and preparing, how will I counteract this? That's how the alarm stage is when it comes to burnout. And the body now initiates what we call fight or fright response. So when in the alarm stage, your body beats or your heart will beat faster, sending more blood to your arms and legs in case you may need to fight or sometimes flee. So the alarm enables the body therefore to process more energy to enable you fight back by facing the perceived challenge or stress. Stage number 2, it is called resistance stage. Now, if the perceived stress or challenge continues, then the body stays activated at a higher metabolic level in an effort to offset that persistent stress. So in resistance, you are trying to do everything possible to overcome. However, my listener, it is good to note that the body cannot maintain this level indefinitely, and its resources will eventually deplete, and therefore you will become exhausted and eventually give up. And that is now when you get into the last stage, which we call exhaustion stage. Now, after a prolonged exposure to stress and after trying to resist for a certain period of time, your resources are now depleted, and your body is now tired psychologically, physically, and even emotionally. And therefore This wear and tear can even go a long way in suppressing your immune system, causing some bodily functions to deteriorate. Now, at exhaustion stage, my listener, you sink into burnout situation, and therefore a good parent now is transformed from being a helper into one who needs help. Now, what are the signs and symptoms observed as evidence of parental burnout? And I think that is our second objective. Now, before I discuss this, the question, I want you to know that sign is the effect of parental burnout that can be observed by other people. The people you are living with, your children, your spouse, even the neighbors. Now, symptoms of burnout are subjective to the parent, the one who is suffering. You can be able to feel them because they are part of you, and therefore they require self-assessment. So what are these symptoms and signs? Point number one is feelings of intense exhaustion. Exhaustion, my listener, is a state of extreme physical or mental tiredness. For example, you may come home feeling tired because already you have come from work to go to bed so that you can relax. But when you wake up in the every morning, you feel you are still feeling more tired. And this fatigue becomes persistent even when you have not done anything tiring during the day. So if it is a persistent fatigue, so that can be a sign. Point number two is feeling emotionally hardened. Now, a parent becomes insensitive to other people's feeling. For example, a child may fall down and get hurt, and instead of empathizing and helping, you laugh at him like nothing has happened. In other words, you may start behaving like a sadist. An insensitive parent may therefore treat children or the spouse as if they are impersonal. Impersonal meaning like they don't have feelings. Now, and these may result to higher risk of neglectful and violent behavior. You may find yourself not caring about their well-being, or sometimes engaging in violence. Point number three is withdrawal, or what we call detachment. Now, this is feeling emotionally and psychologically disconnected with your children or even with your spouse. Now, without an appropriate warm and loving parental figure, children are likely to develop multiple personality, emotional and psychological difficulties. So withdrawing from children or from your spouse sometimes may involve not managing their day-to-day well-being, and sometimes you may find yourself having trouble in showing what you may call parental love. Now, emotionally detached parents may have a difficulty in coping with their own emotional or psychological need, and therefore they might find themselves sometimes becoming rejecting and self-centered, or sometimes becoming attention seekers in the family. Point number four is a pessimistic attitude. Pessimism, my listener, can be described as a tendency to think negatively. A parent who is pessimistic may frequently identify and focus on the negative and vulnerable aspects of a situation, in belief, while at one time you may have been a parent who sees the glass half full. Burnout may cause you to feel as if the glass is half empty. You don't see anything positive in the family. And sometimes this may be manifested by the way you discredit ideas and victory, sometimes giving up very early, or sometimes finding it difficult to forgive. And therefore you keep on dwelling on problems, holding grudges, and sometimes refusing to let things go. In other words, you may even end up remaining overly suspicious of your children and your spouse. Point number 5 is feeling inadequate and ineffective. You perceive self as a failure in parenting and family life. You lose a sense of accomplishment related to parenting, and this may be accompanied by feelings of low self-esteem or even lack of self-appreciation as a parent. Point number 6 is decision fatigue. Now, physical and mental exhaustion can lead to a host of mental problems, or what we call cognitive problems, such as forgetfulness, a very low concentration level, or sometimes difficulties in paying attention. Now, the inability to confidently make simple personal and family decisions leaves challenges experienced unresolved. And do you know what, my listener? This causes more stress. Now, how do we portray, how do we manifest decision fatigue? Sometimes it can be manifested through procrastination. You keep on saying, I'll tackle this one right alone. Or through avoidance, where you keep on saying, I can't deal with this one right now. Or sometimes indecision, where because of doubt, you just say, no, I don't want anything to do with it, and you just ignore and you don't make any decision at all. Point number 7 is disillusionment with parenting. This happens when expectations in parenting are not met. You start feeling let down by children, or even by the spouse, or even by your family. And these may result to feelings of frustration and hopelessness. And if you are not careful in the process of nursing yourself, some may resort to drugs and substance abuse and alcoholism. Point number 8 is decline in enthusiasm, commitment in parenting. Now, a parent who had great motivation in performing family responsibilities and call now start losing interest and self-drive. It is in the morning and you feel like you can't wake up to serve your family. Because you feel exhausted, you feel frustrated. And this can lead to loss of productivity and pleasure in parental roles. Point number 9 is escape and suicidal ideation. And this happens especially at the advanced stage of exhaustion, of burnout, and whereby you find your mind now is preoccupied with thoughts of running away, leaving behind your children and spouse as a way of solving the problem. You want to run away from parental responsibility. Or sometimes your mind will become preoccupied with death and dying, or sometimes having thoughts of suicide. And some people have even gone to an extent of committing suicide. My advice to you, my listener, if you reach this level of suicidal ideation, please seek immediate professional help. Let us destigmatize counseling. I am always concerned to find how sometimes we are suffering, and there are counselors, there are professionals who have really trained for you so that they can be able to assist you in addressing most of these issues. Always feel free. You can call, you can visit a counselor and discuss these issues. Let us know that this is a good service and it is meant for you. Just like the way you have doctors to treat you with malaria. Let us destigmatize. People don't go to counseling because they are insane. You just go there to share as a way of promoting your mental health. Point number 10 is sleeplessness and sleep disorder. Now, due to persistent thoughts, you may find it difficult sometimes to fall asleep, and you may sometimes even get disturbed sleep. For example, where you find yourself waking up in the middle of the night, or even sometimes waking earlier than you have to. And it is only because you are mentally disturbed. And if this lack of sleep or sleeplessness habit continues, it can have other adverse effects. For example, sleeplessness may lead to 1. Impaired ability to concentrate, poor memory. It may also you may have difficulty in coping with minor irritations. In fact, when you don't have enough sleep, you get angry very easily. Or sometimes you can have what we call decreased ability to enjoy family and social relationships. Now, and if it persists for a long time, it could also be a sign of depression. Point number 11 is irritability and quickness to anger. Now, I want to say this, that parental burnout victims often feel like they have failed in parenting and may experience guilt and frustrations. Now, these feelings may turn into anger and resentment as parenting and family life stress continues. Point number 12 is increased conflict between parents. Now, when I talk about increased conflicts, this I'm talking in terms of 1, frequency. The conflicts are very many. And then in terms of intensity, there are serious conflicts. Now, as burnout becomes more severe, the anger may intensify and result in angry outbursts and serious arguments at home. And in some incidences, it may lead to actual violence. Let me discuss this a little bit further. We have 2 types of violence you can likely to experience. 1, I call it self-directed violence. This is self-abuse. You directed the violence toward yourself, and this can be manifested in different ways. You can do things like self-mutilation. You can I remember there's a case I've heard of a man who chopped off his genitals. That is self-mutilation. Or it can be in form of suicidal behavior, suicidal thoughts, attempted suicide, and sometimes even completed suicide. That is self-directed violence. The second violence is interpersonal violence. This refers to that violence inflicted on other members of the family. It can either be 1, psychological violence. This includes verbal and non-verbal communication used with the intent to harm another person mentally or emotionally, or to exert control over another person. So you do things like humiliating each other, degrading each other, or even limiting access to things and people, or sometimes what I find as excessive monitoring of a person's whereabouts or communications. And these are very common things that we find in our family scenarios. Then the other form of physical violence is what we call physical violence. In physical violence, you use the physical force with the potential of causing harm, injury, or even death. And it may include things like biting, shocking, slapping, punching, sometimes hitting or even burning, and other times even the use of violence. The incidences of burning and use of body injuries have been reported frequently in our society. It can also be sexual violence, which involves acts of being committed or attempted against a victim who has not freely given consent. And particularly these ones may actually affect children who are sexually abused by their own parents. And lastly, it can also be in the form of neglect or deprivation. Now, this type of abuse is very common, and it occurs when parents fails in fulfilling their responsibility, which they are supposed to perform as parents, by providing care to their children or to their spouse who are unable to care for themselves. Now, neglect may include the failure to provide children with sufficient supervision, nourishment, or sometimes even medical care. Point number 13 is changes in appetite. Now, in early stages of burnout, you may not feel hungry some of the time, and you may skip meals as a result. But in later stages, it may worsen to a complete loss of appetite and significant loss of weight. Or some people will also behave the other way around, where the appetite is high, so you overeat, and therefore you may end up becoming obese. Point number 4 is self-neglect. My listener, self-neglect is a behavioral condition in which an individual neglects to attend his or her basic needs, such as personal hygiene, appropriate clothing, feeding, or tending appropriately to any medical condition that you could have. Point number 15 is physical and health symptoms such as headaches, stomachache, or high blood pressure. Sometimes because of the stress and the fatigue, you may also experience back and neck pain. Sometimes you can have anxiety. Other times can even lead to depression. Now, my listener, those are some of the signs and symptoms that are very common in a parent who is having burnout. Now, it is my expectation, therefore, that you have gained some insight that can guide you in self-assessment to know if you are having burnout or not. My advice to you as I conclude is that if you have these symptoms and they have persisted for some time, please don't shy off from looking for professional help. I am really encouraging people, including you, my listener, start embracing counseling services. They are very important, and they will be able to help you in addressing these issues, and you are going to live a happier life, and you'll be able to cope with very many life challenges. So, if you are suffering parental burnout, it is time to focus on the recovery process. And because we cannot discuss the recovery process here, the gradual program is going to address this as a program, as an episode in the upcoming programs. Therefore, keep on following, and you'll get more information on how to do this. Now, we offer mental health promoting empowerment seminars and workshops for parents, for employees, for youth, for children, including teenagers, for leaders, for parents, and therefore we would be happy if you can engage us in your school, in your church, in your organization. You can call the numbers given in this video to get into contact, or even visit our website indicated in the video, and you'll read more and also get more contacts all about us. You can also visit my YouTube account, Stephen Kamore, subscribe, and to keep on getting updates on other upcoming empowering episodes. You can also visit our Facebook account, Counseling Research Institute of Kenya. Like it and follow to access life transforming information. Glad Healthy Walk program continues. Keep on following. Thank you.